Hey everybody, and welcome to This Week in Hell. I'm your host, John Wilkie. First up this week's the Paralympics opening ceremony took place on the 29th of August there. 4,400 athletes will be taking part in the Games in the coming weeks, and new Prime Minister Keir Starmer was in attendance. Among the athletes, in no particular order, taking part will be Lucy Shuker, Terry Bywater, Nantenin Keita, and Alexis Hanning-Quant. They're not all British, by the way, just so we're clear. Alexis is French. As part of the opening ceremonies, smoke was released in the colours of the French flag, as well as musician Christina and the Queens performing live. Next story isn't so fun. This story in itself has been unfolding for quite some time. And it happened last year in Sacramento. A woman by the name of Jessie Peterson was taken to hospital after a diabetic episode. A couple of days after that, she spoke to her mother. She seemed okay. I think she said she wanted to come home to her mother. And 3 days after that, Jessie's mother calls the hospital looking for her daughter, wanting an update, wanting to know how she's doing, only to be told they have no patient by that name at the hospital. Her mother knows that's not true. And even if she wasn't there currently, they should have been able to tell her when she left. So after a bit of poking on Jessie's mother's behalf, she's eventually able to get them to admit that, she apparently left against doctors' advice. The problem is, after that, Jessie was nowhere to be found. The family looked for her. They tried all the usual places they would expect to be able to contact her. Nothing. No activity at all. She wasn't picking up her phone. So, obviously, the family is now suspicious that the hospital wasn't telling the truth. They waited, fraught with worry, but hoping that some good news would come, until one day they get contacted by a detective from the Sacramento County Sheriff's Office, telling them that a death certificate has been issued for Jessie. They were told that her remains were not at the coroner's office, but they should contact the hospital for further information, so that's what they did. That would be the same hospital that had already assured this family that Jessie had checked out against doctor's orders. But Jessie's mother contacted the hospital. They told her they'd call her back. They did not call her back. They did eventually get a call from a mortuary telling them that Jessie had been found at one of the hospital's off-site storage facilities, cold storage facilities. Her body was so badly decomposed, they couldn't even perform an autopsy to ascertain the cause of death. Now you remember that at the start of this story, I told you that Jessie had talked to her mother on the phone. It seems she died only 2 hours after that call. That brings up a lot of questions, doesn't it? And hopefully those questions will be answered by the legal case the family has filed against the hospital. Jessie was a type 1 diabetic. Her body was transferred to the cold storage facility on the 9th of April 2023, we know that much. She was placed on a shelf and forgotten. It was almost a year later where the death certificate was issued. It was almost a year later that the death certificate was issued and the family was informed that she was dead. I'm going to quote here. This is california.public.law I got this from. CA Health and Safety Code Section 102-800. The medical and health section data and physician or coroner certification shall be completed by the attending physician within 15 hours after the death, or by the coroner within 3 days of examination of the body. The physician shall, within 15 hours after the death, deposit the certificate at the place of death, or deliver it to the attending funeral director at his or her place of business, or at the office of the physician. Why that did not happen here is only one of many, many curious questions. Next up, apparently they're reviewing the policy and looking into new measures to restrict smoking even further in England. This, at present, isn't planned to be extended to the rest of the UK, but if they implement it there, of course, they will roll it out in the rest of the UK most likely. For those outside the UK, there is no ban on smoking per se, but there are restrictions on where you can do it. Like, you can't do it in enclosed spaces like restaurants, bars. I remember when I was getting driving lessons from my creepy driving instructor. I'll go into that further, though I have mentioned it before, that even he was grumbling that he was no longer allowed to smoke inside his car because the car was used for his business. He was creepy because he was doing naughty things to the female students. He got arrested, went to jail, deservedly. Anyway, that brings us back to the actual story we're talking about. And so what would happen is people would, it's a very common sight in the UK, you walk by, drive by, cycle by a pub. More often than not, you will find one or two or a group of people outside chatting and having a cigarette. Doesn't bother me too much since I'm by them fairly quickly. Although the only time I have raised an eyebrow in recent weeks is when I was coming home from buying some groceries. This happened within a few days of each other. Two separate guys walking along the street smoking joints because I could smell the weed. And I thought, well, I'm pretty sure that's still illegal, but you're brave. I do support the legalization of marijuana in the UK. I just don't think you should be smoking it while walking along the street. A little bit of decorum is all I ask. Now, personally speaking, when it comes to people smoking cigarettes, I don't care, have at it. Ideally, no one would do it because it's kind of a nasty habit and it affects everything. To give you an idea, my mother smoked. And my mother passed away in 2008. Literally years after, that's years of vacuuming, dusting, cleaning the house, I could still occasionally smell cigarette smoke. I don't now, it's been a very long time, the smell is thankfully completely gone, but it permeates things. But as long as it's either just you or other people you're around are also smokers, do what you like, I couldn't care less. I also feel like banning it in pubs and restaurants was the wrong choice. I think it really should be up to the business owners to decide whether or not they want a smoking or a non-smoking business. And the only legal requirement should be to mark. Maybe put a sign up saying smoking or non-smoking. And that'll be okay. I think that's the way that should go. So introducing further measures to restrict it more, it's not going to change anything. People are going to smoke if they want to smoke. The fact of the matter is, we're at a point now where we have more information available regarding the downsides of smoking cigarettes than we ever have. We put warnings on packets. They even started putting nasty, vulgar pictures on packets, which I think was a step too far. But they do all these things, and there's campaigns that crop up now and again encouraging people not to do it, and people still smoke. Younger people, when they're of legal age, start smoking. Let's be honest, some of them do it before then, of course they do. But they can legally buy cigarettes at that point, and they do. People are aware of the risks at this point. And I think any attempt to stop people from doing it now is just a waste of time, it's a waste of money, and it's useless busybodying. Let adults make their own decisions. Just make sure there's spaces for those of us, myself, who aren't interested in the smell and all that, so we don't have to deal with it. But apart from that, let the adults be adults. And next up, we have a music-related story. We actually have two, but we'll start with the first one. We'll go in alphabetical order. We'll start with ABBA. Now, last week, you heard me talking about how Neil Young had allowed Tim Walz, when he announced that he was going to be officially announced, we all knew, was going to be Kamala Harris's, told you I'd get it right this week, Kamala Harris's running mate, her VP pick in the upcoming election. And he was allowed, with Neil Young's blessing, to use Rockin' in the Free World. And I mentioned that the Trump campaign had been denied the use of that song. Well, it turns out ABBA has been complaining this week about the Trump campaign using their songs and clips from their songs at their rallies on the campaign trail. This is a pretty frequent thing, and I was curious, so I looked it up. I'm going to do the thing you're not meant to do on YouTube right now. I'm going to read from a Wikipedia article, but I'm just going to read the names. Right. The following people have all objected to Donald Trump's use of their music. And there's more about that, I'll get to that at the end. Brace yourself. ABBA, Adele, Aerosmith, AHA, The Animals, The Beatles? Never heard of them. Beyonce, Bruce Springsteen, Celine Dion, my girl. Creedence Clearwater Revival, Earth, Wind and Fire, Eddie Grant, Elton John, Everlast, Foo Fighters, Free, Guns N' Roses, Isaac Hayes, that's impressive because he's dead. Johnny Marr, we'll get to him in a bit. Leonard Cohen, Linkin Park, Luciano Pavarotti, also dead. Neil Young, Nickelback, Nico Vega, The OJs, Ozzy Osbourne, Panic at the Disco, Pharrell Williams, Phil Collins, Prince, also dead. Queen, R.E.M., Rihanna, The Rolling Stones, Sinead O'Connor, I'm running out of steam. Tom Petty, Twisted Sister, I'm getting my second wind. Village People, The White Stripes, Yoan Lemoyne. I've never seen the name before, so I apologize if I got that wrong. They have all objected, or their estates have, since some of them are dead, to the Trump campaign using their music. There is a way for them to use that music where they don't even have to worry about the artist's objection. So what will happen in that case is they'll use the music, some artists will object, a lot of them object, and they'll have to either stop using it or it won't matter, because there are cases where, I think it's a BMI. Yes, it's a BMI. There's a license they can get for political use. And I don't think it necessarily matters what your affiliation is. Once you have that license, you have access to 20 million songs you can use for political purposes. I don't think the Trump campaign's checking that here, so hence the fact that they're running into a lot of trouble. So I don't know why they wouldn't just purchase that license and check the database so they know what songs can be used. Or there are musicians that support him, so why not just use their music? They'll probably let them do it willingly. Now, moving on, I did mention Johnny Marr. You may have heard that Oasis are reuniting. Fair enough. I quite like some of their music. More a fan of Noel Gallagher than Liam Gallagher, but I like their music in general. And they're apparently reuniting to do another tour. Good for them. That seems to be a thing right now, because AEG contacted Morrissey and asked him if he'd be willing to tour as the Smiths with Johnny Marr. Morrissey said yes to this, which honestly surprises me. He seems he's based on his reputation, it feels more like he'd be the guy who would instinctively say no to that, but he said yes, surprisingly. He's willing to give it a go, and Marr chose not to respond. Which, I did a little digging, and I went to the Morrissey website, and I found this. Okay, now, I'm going to read the full thing. I may dub this over with a bad Morrissey impression later. It goes, "This is not a rant or historical bombast. It is a polite and calmly measured request. Would you please stop mentioning my name in your interviews? Would you please instead discuss your own career, your own unstoppable solo achievements and your own music? If you can, would you please just leave me out of it? The fact is, you don't know me. You know nothing of my life, my intentions, my thoughts, my feelings. Yet you talk as if you were my personal psychiatrist, with consistent and uninterrupted access to my instincts. We haven't known each other for 35 years, which is many lifetimes ago. When we met, you and I were not successful. We both helped each other become whatever it is we are today. Can you not just leave it at that? Must you persistently, year after year, decade after decade, blame me for everything? From the 2007 Solomon Islands tsunami to the dribble on your grandma's chin. You found me inspirational enough to make music with me for 6 years. If I was, as you claim, such an eyesore monster, where exactly did this leave you? Kidnapped, mute, chained, abducted by cross-eyed extraterrestrials? It was you who played guitar on Golden Lights, not me. Yes, we all know that the British press will print anything you say about me, as long as it is cruel and savage. But you've done all that. Move on. It's as if you can't uncross your own legs without mentioning me. Our period together was many lifetimes ago, and a lot of blood has streamed under the bridge since then. There comes a time when you must take responsibility for your own actions and your own career, with which I wish you good health to enjoy. Just stop using me as clickbait. I have not ever attacked your solo work or your solo life, and I have openly applauded your genius during the days of Louder Than Bombs and Strange Ways Here We Come. Yet you have positioned yourself ever ready as rent-a-quote whenever the press require an ugly slant on something I have said during the last glacial period as the Colorado River began to carve out the Grand Canyon. Please stop. It is 2022, not 1982. And it looks like he listened, because he didn't respond to the request to go on tour. You got what you wanted. And it looks like 2 years later, he has listened. He's not talking about you, he's not taking anything to do with you. And that perhaps might be for the best. Personally, I don't agree with a lot of the things Morrissey says in public, but I do enjoy his music. I enjoyed his work with the Smiths, I've enjoyed quite a bit of his solo career as well. The first of the gang to die is, as the kids say, I know I'm not that old, but a banger. Anyway, whether or not Morrissey goes on tour on his own with a bunch of other musicians as the Smiths, who knows? But I think his time with Marr is quite resolutely done, and that may be the best for everyone concerned. And next up, before we move on to In Memoriam, Pavel Durov, Russian-born, that will shock many of you watching, the founder of the social media website Telegram, has been prevented from leaving France. He's not technically been arrested at this point, I believe. This is somewhat standard in cases like this while authorities investigate and gather information. It might ultimately turn out that he's done nothing wrong. Now, what is Telegram, you might be wondering? I was wondering that too, because I'd only recently seen this pop up in my news feed, and I've seen those silly pictures of the before and after, before he had money, after he had money, those ones, when he's got his hair and all done. Fair enough, I probably wouldn't bother if I was rich getting my hair done because I'm used to this by now, but that's neither here nor there. We were talking about Telegram. Well, what Telegram is a social media website that many people using it believe is fully encrypted. It isn't. It just quite simply isn't. From what I've learned, it does have that feature, but it has to be turned on a user-by-user basis, I believe, through DMs, but don't quote me on that. I haven't done a massive deep dive into how it operates. And given that they're kind of in trouble right now, I wasn't going to join the website or even attempt to join it just to see what was going on, just in case I get into trouble. Why are you joining this website all of a sudden when everyone knows they're up to illegal activity? And that is one of the problems. There is suspicions of illegal activity of many things, such as, well, let's see, what are the complaints here? Complicity in the administration of an online platform to enable illicit transactions by an organized gang, refusal to communicate with authorities, complicity in organized criminal distribution of inappropriate images of minors. It was phrased differently in the official complaint, but this is YouTube, and I'm not going to say those words. According to Durov's lawyer, David Oliver Kaminsky, it's totally absurd to think that the person in charge of a social network could be implicated in criminal acts that don't concern him directly or indirectly. False. It's not actually absurd. Now, if they can prove that he was completely unaware that such acts were taking place on his platform, not inconceivable, but I'm dubious, as it seems to have been well known that this platform could be used for that sort of thing. Then if they can prove that, then he might be off the hook for any wrongdoing. And good for him if he is. Yay, nobody wants to go to jail. However, as the owner and operator of such a platform, it is on him. The onus is on him to be responsible, to ensure that measures are in place so that the user base isn't using it for illicit activity. Like here on YouTube, things will pop up, get posted on YouTube now and again, and there, I dare say, if you looked really hard now, you could probably still find some that are of an inappropriate or morally objectionable nature. When this is brought to YouTube's attention, they will do their best, to varying degrees of success, to deal with it. And every social media platform should be required to do that. I've seen that Elon Musk is panicking now because he's like, oh, if they can come for him, they can come for me. Yeah, maybe they could, so maybe you should clean up your website. I'm not going to say the name because it's such a stupid name. But that's the story as it stands right now. I'm sure there'll be more in the weeks to come, but for now, we move on to In Memoriam, just the one this week. Steve Silberman. He died on August 28th. Steve was a writer, as well as an advocate for neurodivergency and autism. In his career, he'd published in Wired, The New Yorker, among many others. I think was it New York Post? Was that one he published in? Steve is perhaps best known for the book he wrote in 2015, called Neurotribes, The Legacy of Autism and the Future of Neurodiversity, which does exactly what it says on the tin. Sometimes it is okay to judge a book by its cover. And for that he won the 2015 Samuel Johnson Prize for Nonfiction, as well as the Erickson Institute Prize for Excellence in Mental Health Media. Among his other writings, Steve was also a big fan of the Grateful Dead. Did a lot of work, a favourite subject of his, and he got along quite well with those involved, I believe. A notable quote from his Neurotribes book, before we go, and a notable quote from his Neurotribes book is as follows: "By autistic standards, the normal brain is easily distractible, is obsessively social, and suffers from the deficit of attention to detail and routine. Thus, people on this spectrum experience the neurotypical world as relentlessly unpredictable and chaotic, perpetually turned up too loud, and full of people who have too little respect for personal space." I read things like that and I sometimes wonder, am I? I don't think so. I did actually take a test a while back. I don't think so. I think it's fair to say that while I do have some autistic traits, I don't have enough working together to be considered autistic. But many people, I'm about to pull these, some of my best friends are, but it is a fact that many of the people that I care for, many people in my orbit, are neurodivergent, and it has taught me a lot about patience that I feel I did not have before. And I don't think I've ever treated anyone outright poorly, but I think I might have shown a little more kindness before I got to this point. And that brings us to the end of This Week in Hell. I appreciate you all watching. That is if you watch to the end. Unfortunately, it looks like these videos are only getting about 5 or 6 minutes view time on average. So if you did make it to the end, thank you so much. If you would like the video and subscribe to the channel to see future videos, that would be appreciated. That encourages YouTube to recommend it to other people so we can get those view numbers up, because numbers and view time on the videos, not great right now, but I think it's because it's something that's quite different from what I'm doing. And there is another project I am working on in the upcoming weeks. This one's kind of painful for me because it's about Neil Gaiman. I've debated on whether or not I'm going to do it, but I'm just going to sort of pull the trigger and get it done, because not enough people are covering it. It's starting to gain traction, but not enough people are covering it, so I may as well throw my 2 cents in. I might even put in 3 cents. We'll see what kind of week it is. And with that, I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for watching, and take very good care of yourselves. I'm not turning so the chair doesn't creak.